Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connection, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Back to Basics, Reconnecting to the Essence of You. I'm beyond excited today because my guest is Kevin Scott Allen. He's an actor and writer with over 100 TV films credits, so definitely too many to mention here, but you may remember him from American Crime Story and Criminal Minds. He's currently making a big splash in the Netflix #1 hit, American Primeval, as Louis, a character described as pure evil. Kevin is also the author of Conquering the Film and Television Audition and Murder Can Be Fatal, which is being prepped for a film or possible miniseries. Well, hello, Kevin. What an honor to have you on Back to Basics.
Hello, Leticia. It's glad to be here.
Well, I'm beyond excited because I'm a Netflix watcher, so I'm gonna binge the show. I've been told that it's beyond good, so that's probably what I'm gonna do on my weekend here. But you obviously, if you guys go to the IMDb, you're gonna see all the amazing career that Kevin has had, and I'm sure that being an actor is a dream of many. So I normally start the interview. Was this your dream as a child, or who were you as a child? What were you passionate about? Tell us a little bit of your origin story.
Sure. I grew up in a large family, but I pretty much as a child played all alone by myself. There were no other kids around my age. So from really early on, my imagination became my best friend. And the property where I lived was fairly large, so the grove of trees became the forest in the jungle. The pond became the lake with dragons in it. So from a really early age, I was used to just living in my invented world. And when it came time, I guess, to sort of think about, well, what do you want to do with your life? It just seemed to me, well, I've been living in an invented world my whole childhood. Isn't that what acting is? Living in an invented world of somebody's script. And I didn't know if it was a serious profession as a kid. You watch television, you watch movies, and as a child, you think those people are real. You don't think that's somebody's job. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to be in those worlds. I wanted to be a real person in that world of the story, whatever it was. And when I found that, it's an actual job, it just seemed like a no-brainer. That's what I'm going to do.
Oh, I love that. I love that. The clarity. I love this question because in all the, over 250 episodes, it's amazing how some people like you saw it very clear. Like, I like to live in this world and this is what I want to do. Some other people don't see it then, but then eventually comes back at a later time still to make its presence felt. So I'm happy that you saw it. And I know you started very young. Were your parents supportive of this? How was that interaction? Because I always see parents, struggling with this thing when the kids say, I want to be an actor or a singer or whatever.
I think they thought I would grow out of it, to be honest. Yeah. I started when I was 7. I did my first television show at 7. And the agreement I had with my parents was, all right, if this is something you want to do, we'll let you do it in the summers, but you got to go to school. And I didn't, no on-set teachers. No, you got to go to regular school. And I think they thought, all right, after 1 or 2 summers, he'll grow out of it. Well, I did. And I would work in the summers. I went to boarding schools. So I really wasn't home a lot as a kid because when
I believe it
came to summer, I would come out and stay with my uncle who lived in California, and he also lived in New Mexico. And I would work as a child during the summer, then I'd go back to school and I'd come out and do jobs. And it it became a way of life for me. And I think probably about the time I was ready to go to college, my parents realized, well, all right, what he's going to do, let him do it.
That is, well, that's great. That I think it's a great approach, and I asked a question when I saw like you also wrote, and I want to get into it about, conquering film and television audition because my son has been doing acting since he was 4 also,
Wow.
but also like commercials. And I always took it as more like he's going to learn to speak in public. And I think that's a good quality to have, no
Sure.
matter, not so much for the acting, but almost like for public speaking. And now he's 14 and he was named school president. So I guess the strategy is working.
It worked. Yeah.
Not so much for the acting, but you learn so much as a mom, and I was never like, huh. I mean, he got invited, I think, to Modern Family in LA, and I'm like, oh no, we're not gonna make that trip. So I was almost like not like hardcore as a mom, but the whole audition process is huge. So, I mean, what can you share? You wrote a book about it in terms of how to help people wanting to get into this industry. I mean, I think it's great that you share the wisdom through a book.
Well, thanks. It began because I have a number of friends who wanted help with auditions. And these were people who had careers. They weren't just starting out. So many of them had been series regulars. And for whatever reason, the show ended and they had to actually audition for a new show. And they didn't know how. So I realized what most people don't understand is that auditioning is different than the performance on set. Vastly different. When you're performing on set, you're performing in such a way that you're part of a picture that's going to be created later. An editor is going to use this shot, close-up of you, a close-up of me, a close-up of the dog, a wide shot of the whole scene, and they'll create the story that way. We don't have that at our disposal when we're auditioning. We have to give life to the part, but we have to give life in a specific way. In other words, they're looking at us and they're only looking at us. There's no cutting to the gun. There's no cutting to the stranger walking by the window. Everything that happens in that scene, we have to tell with what's going on in our face, how we see things, how we express it. We don't have the luxury of cutting to something else. And a lot of students or a lot of actors think, well, it says he picks up the gun, says she picks up the knife. You really can't do all that in an audition. So you have to look at it as, what can I bring to them that will show them what's happening inside of me? They know the story, but what they need to see is me experiencing the story through my eyes, through what's happening inside, through your thoughts. So that's the biggest challenge for most actors is don't tell the story necessarily the way it's written. Tell the story with what's going on inside the character in those moments.
That's powerful even for life. I mean, storytelling, some people say it all the time, like the power, even if you're in the business mode and all that, it's what, make a story about what you're selling, and then it's going to go all very different.
Yes, depending on how people to whom you're selling react.
Exactly. So in your journey, of course, you have many roles. Can you share about, some of the favorite roles like you like to play? Of course, we're going to talk about Louis because it's #1 hit in Netflix, and hopefully we're encouraging people to check out the show. But what's like your has been your favorite of your career?
Gosh, there have been so many that stand out for different reasons. I really enjoyed Star Trek Deep Space Nine, simply because I had to go through 2 hours, 2.5 hours of makeup just to become the character, to show up. And that was fascinating to me. And the interesting thing about that character is I read for the audition one way. When I got into the makeup chair and saw what I was going to look like, I thought, this is a different being than what I thought it was when I was just reading the script. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed exploring what did this bizarre, make me feel like. So I had a really good time, and everybody on the set was doing the same. You'd look in the mirror, they'd look in the mirror and say, oh, okay, it's going to affect how I perform. Great, it defines the character even more. I enjoyed that a lot. I enjoyed a show called Homefront, which was a television series I did in the 90s. And it sort of was really following the trajectory of playing unsavory characters that I had sort of started doing. And he was a hideous, racist bigot. But what I liked about him was that when I had meetings with the producer and the creator of the show, he explained, you're not a racist bigot just because we want to have a nasty person on the show. This character is a racist bigot because he's representing what America was at that time. It took place in the 40s. So I realized, okay, I'm not just a nasty human being. I've got to represent the racism and bigotry that was rampant in America post-World War II. So I kind of felt I had a responsibility to be larger than just playing a guy who's a jerk and show up on set and just be an idiot. I had to play it in such a way that people started to understand this isn't an isolated character. This is what America was. And I credit that show and those producers actually with helping me see that my job as an actor is more than just showing up and saying the lines they gave me. It's understanding the story and how this human being contributes to the greater story, not just what's happening in my scenes. So it really was a standout character for me as well. There are other ones where I had a lot of fun. I remember one was a country western show where I had to sing while being arrested, which was the strangest thing I've ever done, but it was fun. What I really liked about moving in American Primeval is we were on location in New Mexico from March until June to July. Actually, I was there till June. And you're outside, you're in the elements, you're not on a set, you're not in a sound stage, it's not comfortable. I fall on the ground, there are rocks, there are pebbles, there are stones. Everybody was in the same situation. And it gave an authenticity that you can't really get when you're in the sound stage. And that just breathing the air, breathing the cold air in March immerses you in the world that we were creating. And we were on a reservation. So we were really not near society. And even on where we were, the trailers were quite a distance from where we actually were doing the shooting. So you're literally out in the wilds. And the set decorating was unbelievably incredible. The details those guys and gals went into making this wild camp was amazing. And all of that just contributed to me to an incredible experience. I didn't have to use my imagination as much because the world was created for me.
Well, that definitely sounds intriguing. I'm sure a lot of people are going to tune in. And besides, what you share in terms of the set and how it was shot, what can you share with the audience also about the show? What do you think is making it so popular? And it's I mean, this is just we know how Netflix works. You see number 2 one day, and then all of a sudden it's exploding because it's just these contagious. Like, what are you watching? And then it really catches fire.
I think first of all, it's an incredibly graphic, violent show, but it deals with the Wild West in a way that's not at all romanticized. Most of the Westerns we see that are created are these romantic hero on a white horse and a white hat comes in and saves the day, and everybody's happy, and the bad guys get what's due them, and the good guys win, and maybe some innocents get hurt along the way. But it's a romanticized time where life was simpler, easier, and therefore it's implied better. This is the opposite. It's a world where any second could see you being killed because it's a world that is unfriendly. Everybody is fighting for what they want. And the way they fight in this world is it's either me or you. And it's just the way it is. So everybody in the show, every character, death is literally around the next corner if they're not careful. So it displays a Western. And I think what was probably true at the time. I mean, there were no laws because there was nobody to enforce the law.
Yeah.
It was truly might makes right. And I think because the story is about innocence, the character of Sarah and her son, Preston was the actor, Devin, who plays them, innocence thrust into this world, I think that's alluring. And then you have a reluctant hero, Taylor, who's going to help them. And I think that's always an alluring tale for people. And then it moves. It moves like an express train. It is not one of those shows where you want to get up and go get a beer and have popcorn and maybe text friends while you're watching.
You're going to miss something.
Exactly, you are. And the way they describe the character, literally, that I play Louis in the blurb that talks about the episode, is that she's just pure evil, unadulterated evil. And I think the juxtaposition, again, of the innocence against this man who just has zero moral compass. Well, he has a moral compass, it's just very different from everybody else's. Again, is an exciting storyline, because what is going to happen? How are these people going to possibly get away from him?
Oh, wow.
It's led a lot of people to tell me that was their favorite episode.
That's great. I was going to say, do you ever enter in conflict, like when you play a character that, I mean, you're obviously a very nice guy, and then you're portraying somebody, so bad, and then people recognize you and say, oh my God, that's my favorite episode, but undoubtedly they're going to relate you to that character. Do you ever enter in conflict with it?
Yeah, I remember one time I was at the grocery store and the woman recognized me. This was back when I was doing Homefront, which was a nice guy at all, hideous character. And she was throwing my groceries, throwing them down the conveyor belt, staring at me just with this evil look in her eye. And
oh my God.
That's another person came up to me at a party and said, oh, you're that bigot. And I said, no, I'm not. And we talked, it's a character. And she said, well, you're damn good at it. So
oh my God, that's good.
Or people will look at you in the store and they'll think, I don't like this person, but they can't figure out why. They don't quite know where they've seen me before, but they know that they don't like it. And that happens all the time. And I'll usually just smile, wave, or just go about my business and say, I don't have time for a 20-minute conversation.
Of course. Well, I think that's less traumatic than, the perception that you are an asshole, but then eventually realizing, wow, he's really nice, is better than the perception of those nice characters that people think, oh my God, I love you. And then they get run by a boss.
And there were a couple of those, yeah. Exactly.
And there are a couple of those, absolutely. So tell us about the new project you have going on with Murder Can Be Fatal.
Murder Can Be Fatal is a mystery that I wrote. One of my favorite relatives was an uncle of mine growing up. One of the few who really took the time to enjoy my imaginary worlds with me. And he was a mystery writer, a successful mystery writer, 30s, 40s, 50s, and early 60s. So we would create stories together as part of the game. We would create a mystery. One would come up with it, and the other one had to solve it. And during COVID, I was working during COVID. I was one of the few actors who shot some projects, but there was a lot of downtime. And I thought, I've always wanted to write a mystery in tribute to my uncle. So I wrote Murder Can Be Fatal, and it got a lot of great attention. And now the management team with whom I'm with really is pushing it to make it into a film or a miniseries, because it was written with that in mind. It was written to be not only a good read, but the idea that, this could and should be available on multiple platforms, not just in book form, but in shooting form. So they're working on that now. And of course, everybody who reads it says, oh my God, I read the lead character and I think you. One friend said, every time this character opens his mouth, I hear your voice. I said, well, yeah, I didn't write it necessarily for me to do, but that's what's going to come out. So that's what they're talking about now. And I am not married to any particular role. I can play the lead role. I can be completely behind the scenes. I really don't care. I just want.
Well, it's you at the end of the day. It's your mind. It's you.
Yeah.
When you wrote it, it's you all over. So you don't need to be there. But I think you're a great actor, and I think it would be great to. As I envision it, if somebody writes something, probably they are very good, well poised to bring it to the screen if they have the acting chops, which you do. So we shall see. I'm curious what's going to happen with that.
I'm also curious to see what a director would do with it. A lot of people who create something, who write something, are married to it. This is the way it has to be, and no other way. And that's not how I've ever worked. I really like the collaboration in this business. So I'm very anxious to have other people look at it and say, well, what do you see? How do you see this working? And get their ideas. Doesn't mean I have to like them, but I may be very pleasantly surprised. So
Absolutely. That's how magic happens when you bring other voices and other thoughts. Like what people these days, they hate the word diversity, but to me, that's exactly what it means. Not gender, it's diversity of thoughts and of perspective of like, tell me something that maybe I haven't thought about and it's going to make these better.
I agree 100%. We did a lot of improv on American Primeval, which terrified some of the younger actors. They got angry. It's like, why are you getting angry? Well, why do we have to memorize lines if we're just going to change them? And I said, because the director is giving you the opportunity to bring your own voice to this character and see if it works better than what's written or differently and see what we can find. And to me, that was a gift from God.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. So I'm curious, you've been on the industry, obviously you have a career that spanned, a long time. What are your changes from your point of view? I mean, obviously the whole film industry, TV has changed, and nobody imagined that Netflix and the streaming I mean, if you have told an industry producer, a movie producer back then, like, oh, this is all going to change, they say impossible. But it happened.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear your perspective. Is it better? Is it worse? Is it just different?
All of those. It is better in many ways in that there was so much content out there now being produced. There are more jobs.
Yes.
It's worse in that because anybody can pick up an iPhone and make it and film something, you have a lot of content being produced with very small budgets. So you can produce something without risking losing your house and losing everything if it doesn't succeed. And so you have a lot of things that are being done kind of half-assed because they don't need to hire necessarily the best people to make the best set. It's almost like the old days, hey, we have a barn, let's put on a show. But because of that, also, you're getting new voices that are entering in the industry in a much easier way. And I find that exciting. But new voices, there's something that is very big in China called verticals, which means it's a show that's filmed literally to be watched on your phone. So it's filmed vertically. And according to my manager, that industry in the United States is believed to be something that's going to have up to $5 billion producing verticals in 2025 alone. It's big in China. It hasn't necessarily get here yet in terms of the popularity, but what you're getting now is young voices coming in, writing these shows that are shot like a movie. It's just framed differently. And there must be 6, 7, 8 filming every single day somewhere across the city. So is it going to succeed? I don't know. But work is work. And to me, I have a director with whom I worked before who wrote one that a TV studio called Salty TV picked up and produced and said to me, would you be in this? And I thought, well, yeah, I have nothing else to do. Sure, let's do it. And it's an exciting time because we don't know now what's going to go on. The old days, if you have to do a network show, it's either CBS, NBC, or ABC, and that's great, and they were the king. Now, Netflix is king right now. Next year, it could be Hulu, could be Amazon, could be anything, or it could be something that some kids thought up a year ago, and then now they've got a service.
Yeah, it's almost like a democratization of the industry where people now have access. And so, as you say, so there's a lot of noise, but there's also a lot of good content being created in different ways. So I think that that's fantastic. And you obviously, I think the creativity, the people like you know, in that industry, you're creative by default. You cannot live, I think, and make a living a long time if you're not open to be creative.
Yes, I agree with you. Open to change as well. One of the things that I find more exciting now about the way stories are told is they're getting much smaller. If you think about movies, they used to be these grand spectacles with these huge sets and these huge productions, and now they're really getting into the stories that really affect us. And look at all the ones that are up for Best Picture are the stories of what are the internal struggles of the human being, not necessarily the great external. And I find that fascinating because now I have to go into myself and find a struggle that may not be readily apparent, but the audience is going to pick it up through my eyes, through my thoughts, through what I'm feeling. And that to me is an exciting journey.
Well, I in a way, you describe why I created this podcast 5 years ago. I like the struggle. I like to hear about very successful people like you, and I always ask, tell us the journey and what happened the way you imagine, what didn't happen, because I find that inspires others in that moment in the journey where they think everything is dark and black, and then they hear somebody overcoming that. Like I've had. I have very successful people on the show saying, I walked up with the pills to end it, in my pocket for a year. And these are super rich, super successful. You never would have imagined. And then I get texts of people saying that's exactly what I needed to hear because, we don't know what people go through. So I think that's why it's called back to basics. And to your point, that inner struggle, that how do I connect to what matters to me? I think it's very important.
It's interesting. Many, many people, me included, become actors because we want to hide. We become actors because we think what I am is not enough. So I'm going to hide behind a character, hide behind a story, and the world will like me better. And what I came to realize is that if I'm really, truly working my best, I'm hiding in plain sight. If I'm really identifying all the things about me that I think the world doesn't like, all the reasons why I think I'm not good enough, or I'm not this, or I'm not that, well, everybody has those. And all you need to do is find that part of the character that has that as well, live it, feel it. Nobody knows what you're thinking. Nobody knows what's going on. And the world will embrace it because we want stories about people who are imperfect. Perfect people don't make great stories. So anybody out there, if you want to create, or if you want to be an actor and you feel it's because the world will like you better, I say, embrace the things you think aren't good about you. Embrace it because that is your magic. That is something that you're feeling that nobody else can bring to the screen. And if you do that, we will always interpret anything you do through the lens of the story. It's always going to be interpreted as the character, not you. And you get to bring your insecurities and make them work for you, not against you.
Wow, that's a lot of wisdom right there. taking lots of notes. When I take lots of notes, it's a good sign. It's like it's you're sharing a lot of wisdom. Now that's amazing. And I should have asked, but are you based in LA? I assume.
Yes, I am in Los
Yeah. So obviously we'll stand with you guys. You know what has happened in LA with the fires and all that. That's been horrible. So I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
what do you feel after? I mean, how does the city is coping with it? What can you share about that horrible experience?
Well, that's difficult. I'm fortunate that I didn't live in a fire zone. You say I still have green outside, but I have friends who did. I know people who've lost houses. And it's something, LA is kind of an isolated city in that a lot of what goes on in the world doesn't seem to affect many people here. Yes, we have extreme poverty in some areas. We've got crime. There's all kinds of stuff. It's a city. But fortunately, it doesn't enter into everybody's world. And so when you have a disaster like this, it really brings you back to, wow, anything. Kind of like the show American Primeval. Disaster is literally around the corner. Don't be fooled into complacency, into thinking that everything is beautiful and it will stay that way all the time. That's what human life is. You can change in a heartbeat. And I think what the devastation has done is it's brought back to a lot of people who maybe live in bubbles that, hey, nothing in this world is permanent. So don't get attached to it. Doesn't mean you have to seek destruction, but just understand that we're all in this together. So somebody else's misfortune today could be mine tomorrow. So let's all reach out. Let's help each other in any way we can. I saw fires lit. I could literally see the fire from my property. Fortunately, as I said, it didn't come near me, but I knew at that time, I know people who live there. And sure enough, I went on the map. There was a house actually I used to live in. I'm sure it was destroyed. And it just, it's heartrending, especially knowing people have lost everything. But what is really lovely to see is the people in the city coming together to help each other. There was this huge concert that raised, I think, $100 million to help the people in the fire. And that's what I think people all want to badmouth this country. And there are a lot of reasons perhaps to do that. But what I've seen time and time again is people in this country come together when somebody is really in need. And that to me, especially in these times of unease, we don't know what's going to happen, that to me is life affirming and made me feel better about the world. That you know what? When disaster strikes, people do come together.
So well said. And yeah, it's very inspiring. And I think that the bubble that you mentioned is something it's easy to get into. And these humbling experiences probably remind us that we shouldn't live in the bubble. Like we should be willing to help each other even before disaster strikes. Because as you say, it's around the corner sooner or later. Like I'm a very optimistic person, but sometimes I think I'm a worst case scenario planner, which it doesn't make me a pessimist. It makes me, just consider that this and this can also happen and be prepared. But it's like some people, they disconnect both things. Like you cannot be optimistic when you're thinking this can happen. So I think that it's a good thing to be aware of disaster can happen, but also to find the goodness in people, as you say, it's inspiring.
I mean, everybody seeks control, and when you realize that ultimately there really is no control, we can't control. We would like to think we can, and we, as we can structure our lives such that we have as much control as possible. But ultimately, the earthquake, hurricane, drive-by in the wrong place at the wrong time, all that is possible. I like your attitude of you can plan as best you can for, okay, worst case scenario, what can I do? But then just accept the fact that ultimately, all I can do is the limited things I can do, and it's not a guarantee, and that's okay, because that's what makes life exciting. Pardon me. that nothing is guaranteed. And think about a story. If you read a book or you watch a show and you know how it's going to end, oh, it's just, yes, it's a formula. I know exactly what's going to happen. It's not interesting to watch. People like to watch shows where they don't know what's going to happen. So part of the being an actor taught me that. Because I'm always playing characters who think the world is going to go one way and it goes the opposite. And I realized, well, that's really kind of what life is. And if we accept that, we'll get through it. If we don't, we're going to be devastated when something does happen. And as you said, if you don't plan, if you don't have some kind of plan, you really will be devastated.
Yeah, well said. Well, I you say that, and I'm looking at my word for this year. It's flow, and it's precisely what you're saying. That it's like you can try to control, but at the end you have to flow. You have to flow towards whatever direction you're being directed. So no, this I could talk to you forever, Kevin. But it's not every day that I have on the show somebody that had a dream of acting when at 7 years old and made the entire life of it. So if you have anybody out there, young or older, that has the same dream, what do you think it's a recipe for success or the traits to succeed at an acting, career?
Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself, embrace yourself, accept yourself for who you are. Don't try to fit yourself into a mold of what you think the business wants you to be. That's the trouble most actors, the mistake they make, they come out here and they say, well, this is what I need to be. I need to be the pretty guy, the pretty girl, the handsome, the rugged, the this, the that, or the other. If you start there, you're already starting in an artificial place. And the only thing we can truly bring to anything in life is our authentic self. So believe in yourself, understand who you are authentically, and figure out a way for you to fit in the business. Allow the stories to be molded around you. And if they don't want to hire you, they want to hire somebody else. It's not because you're no good, it's because they have a different view. But if you embrace who you are, you'll bring an authenticity that nobody else can bring. And there's nothing more exciting to me than watching an actor who brings something different because it's him or her, it's unique to them, and they may not know what to do with it, but it's exciting to watch. So if you do that, your path will be much easier. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy. It's a very difficult path. Many people want to do it. Many, thousands. There are many times 1,000 submissions per role in a project. And this is not an exaggeration. So it will be impossible to figure out what they, quote, want. So if you accept yourself, you bring yourself with all your insecurities and all your problems and all the things that you think people don't like, and you bring it to your work, I think you will find a way to be successful. And success isn't always measured by look at the house and the money.
I love, and I think that advice goes for everything. It's such a good advice that it's not only for an actor, it's for anything you do in life. I think I love what you say, don't start from an artificial place. I've had people pretend they speak languages when I interview them, like they say they're fluent and then they're not, and that's it. You could have been an amazing candidate, but because you chose to start from an artificial place, you're now ruled out. And so I think that that's such a powerful advice in all walks of, even in romantic relationships, like what happens if you start
Exactly.
with a big push of bra? At some point, somebody's going to find out it was a fake.
Yeah, yes, indeed. I have experience with that. Yes.
So, Kevin, my last question always is, well, I have two quick ones. One, have we not spoken about something that you want to highlight? Any projects, anything else that you want to highlight? I know the show is the biggest thing, and also your other project that we discussed. Anything else that you?
Not really. I have a bunch of projects that are in the beginning stages and I'm excited about, but I learned a long time ago in this business, you can't get excited about something until you actually show up on set and you're in production, because
Absolutely.
years and years and years. One of the things I am most excited about is I teach and I tell my students, I get so excited watching their growth. I get more excited when they book jobs than I do. And I've got a group of students now who are bringing chills to me every time they work, because they're starting to embrace who they are. And that fills me with such excitement that I get more thrill out of that than when I work. And so that I wanted to shout out to them all, every single one. I adore, because they're putting in the time and they're really not afraid to be afraid. And that's what I
love that. I love that. And I think I can sense that you are an amazing teacher. I can see that passion. And so, and that's easy, because that my next question is about what other things that we haven't discussed makes you tick. I now learned that teaching makes you tick, and the success of your students. Anything else that, when you need to reconnect, but you maybe wanted that job and you didn't get it, and we go to dark places like, oh my God, the saboteur in us always speak and say, you're not good enough. What makes you reconnect to your true essence? Is there a practice?
Yes, I look at every opportunity for a job, every audition. I look at it as a performance, not an audition. And what I mean is, what makes me tick is creating. And so if I can take an audition and I can honestly, authentically create a human being with all their frailties and strengths, and I can explore that, getting the job is like a second helping of cake. It's nice, but I've already done something of value, and I'm a better actor each time I create. So whenever I'm feeling down and whatever, I simply go back to, what is it that makes me feel alive? It's creating, whether it's writing or whether it's creating in a scene, in an audition. And I realize that's why I do this, because I feel alive. And I say to anybody, if you can't do that, if you base your success or your happiness on the external world and what they think or do for you, you're going to be in a mine locked away and you'll never be able to get out, because the external world should not be what proves that you're a good or a bad in anything. It should be what you experience. And so I go back to that. I go back to creating. I go back to honestly understanding what's going on with me and what's happening in this particular role. And if I get the job, great. If 5, 6, 7, 8 jobs I don't get, I don't worry about it. I can't control that. But what I can control is my reaction. And what I can control is how much creativity I have in my daily life. And I find different ways to create. If you can't act, write. Can't write, cook. Can't cook. So create, do bonsai plants. Creativity is creativity, and there's no one way that's any better than any other. And creating to me is a life-saving experience.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for that, Kevin. I'm so happy I was set to watch your show this weekend, because at least I know what a great guy and great human being you are. And I'm not going to be biased. Had I done it the opposite way, I done it the opposite way, knowing that you were described as pure evil, I may have come differently into this interview. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for allowing us to dream and to explore other other universes when we see these stories. And it's very inspirational that you also bring wisdom to acting. And for that, I thank you.
Well, I thank you. I think you're doing a great job. People need to be inspired, and they need to hear voices like yours.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And to all you listening out there, check out American Prime. You say it.
American Primeval.
Primeval. I always have issues with that word. Check it out. Go to Netflix and also follow Kevin in all his endeavors. I'm sure we're going to see many, many more beautiful projects from you, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Back to Basics. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on Apple Podcast or any of your favorite streaming platforms. This is the best gift you can give us. Join me next week for another Back to Basics conversation. And if you want to find out about other exciting things I'm working on, visit leticialatino.com. Thank you, and until the next time.